Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Whitehouse, aye. Mr. Durbin, aye.
Some states 30.
Mrs. Gillibrand, aye.
You want to be on board too.
Mr. Hawley, no. Mr. Hoven,
How you doing?
no.
Well, thank you.
Mr. Sullivan, no. Miss Alsobrooks, aye. Mr. McConnell, no. Mr. Gallego, aye. Mr. Warnock, aye. Mr. Schumer, Aye. Ms. Slotkin, aye. All right.
On this vote, the yeas are 45, the nays are 50. 3/5 of the senators duly chosen and sworn not having voted in the affirmative. The motion is not agreed to. The clerk will report the motion to a vote cloture.
Cloture motion. We, the undersigned senators, in accordance with the provisions of Rule 22 of the Standing Rules of the Senate, do hereby move to bring to a close debate on the motion to proceed to calendar number 168, H.R. 5371, an act making continuing appropriations and extensions for fiscal year 2026 and for other purposes, signed by 17 senators.
By unanimous consent, the mandatory quorum call has been waived. The question is it the sense of the Senate that debate on the motion to proceed to H.R. 5371, an act making continuing appropriations and extensions for the fiscal year 2026 and for other purposes shall be brought to a close? The yeas and nays are mandatory under the rule. The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Alsoo-Brooks. Ms. Baldwin. Mr. Banks, Mr. Barrasso, Mr. Bennett, Mrs. Blackburn, Mr. Blumenthal, Ms. Blunt-Rochester, Mr. Booker, Mr. Bozeman, Mrs. Britt, Mr. Budd, Ms. Cantwell, Mrs. Capito, Mr. Cassidy, Ms. Collins, Mr. Coons,
That's all right. That's okay.
Mr. Cornyn, Ms. Cortez Masto, Mr. Cotton, Mr. Kramer, Mr. Crapo, Mr. Cruz, Mr. Curtis, Mr. Daines, Ms. Duckworth, Mr. Durbin, Ms. Ernst, Mr. Fetterman, Mrs. Fisher, Mr. Gallego, Mrs. Gillibrand, Mr. Grimm, Mr. Grassley, Mr. Haggerty, Ms. Hassan, Mr. Hawley, Mr. Heinrich, Mr. Hickenlooper, Ms. Hirono, Mr. Hoven, Mr. Husted, Mrs. Hyde-Smith, Mr. Johnson, Mr. Justice, Mr. Kane, Mr. Kelly, Mr. Kennedy, Mr. Kim, Mr. King, Ms. Klobuchar, Mr. Langford, Mr. Lee, Mr. Lujan, Ms. Lummis, Mr. Markey, Mr. Marshall, Mr. McConnell, Mr. McCormick, Mr. Merkley, Mrs. Moody, Mr. Moran, Mr. Marino, Mr. Mullen, Ms. Murkowski, Mr. Murphy, Mrs. Murray, Mr. Ossoff, Mr. Padilla, Mr. Paul, Mr. Peters, Mr. Reed, Mr. Ricketts, Mr. Risch, Ms. Rosen, Mr. Rounds, Mr. Sanders, Mr. Schatz, Mr. Schiff, Mr. Schmidt, Mr. Schumer, Mr. Scott of Florida, Mr. Scott of South Carolina, Mrs. Shaheen, Mr. Sheehy, Ms. Slotkin, Ms. Smith, Mr. Sullivan, Mr. Thune, Mr. Tillis, Mr. Tuberville, Mr. Van Hollen, Mr. Warner, Mr. Warnock, Ms. Warren, Mr. Welch, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Wicker, Mr. Wyden, Mr. Young. Senators voting in the affirmative: Britt, Budd, Cornyn, Cotton, Cruz, Daines, Fisher, Graham, Hawley, Husted, Hyde-Smith, Langford, McConnell, Mullen, Ricketts, Sullivan, Tuberville, Wicker, and Young. Senators voting in the negative: Baldwin, Blumenthal, Blunt Rochester, Cantwell, Coons, Duckworth, Durbin, Gallego, Hassan, Hickenlooper, Kane, Kelly, Lujan, Merkley, Murphy, Murray, Paul, Reed, Sanders, Schiff, Slotkin, Warner, Warren, Welch, Whitehouse, and Wyden. Mr. Ossoff, no. Mr. Peters, no. Mr. Warnock, no. Mr. Fetterman, aye. Ms. Klobuchar, no. Ms. Smith, no. Mr. Schatz. Mr. Schatz. No. Ms. Collins. Ms. Collins. Aye. Mr. Padilla. Mr. Padilla. No. Ms. Hirono. Ms. Hirono. No. Mr. Rounds. Mr. Rounds. Aye. Ms. Murkowski. Ms. Murkowski. Aye. Mr. Kim. Mr. Kim. No. Mr. Cassidy. Mr. Cassidy. Aye. Mr. Risch. Mr. Risch. Aye. Mr. Grassley. Mr. Grassley. Aye. Mrs. Gillibrand, Mrs. Gillibrand, no. Ms. Ernst, aye. Mr. Hoven, aye. Mr. Barrasso, aye. Mr. Thune, aye. Mr. Kramer, aye. Mrs. Capito, aye. Mr. Markey, no. Mr. Moran, aye. Ms. Alsobrooks, no. Mr. Banks, aye. Mr. Haggerty, aye. Mr. Marino, aye. Mr. Schmidt, aye. Mr. Johnson, aye. Mr. McCormick, aye. Mr. Marshall, aye. Ms. Lummis, aye. Mr. Crapo, aye. Mr. Bozeman, aye. Mrs. Blackburn, aye. Mr. Scott of Florida, aye. Mrs. Moody, aye. Mr. Scott of South Carolina, aye. Mr. Van Hollen, no. Mr. Justice, aye. Mr. Lee, aye. Mr. King, aye. Mrs. Shaheen, no. Ms. Cortez Masto, aye. Mr. Bennett, no. Mr. Schumer, no. Mr. Sheehy, aye.
जीएसटी रिफॉर्म्स हो गए और भी टेस्टी क्योंकि बर्गर किंग में मिले मसालेदार क्रिस्पी वेज बर्गर विद थिक फ्राइज एंड कोक एट जस्ट ₹99. New tasty veg meal at just ₹99. See you at Burger King.
Hello, it's Hannah Gelbart here. Welcome to this episode of What in the World from the BBC World Service. During the US presidential election campaign, there was a lot of talk about whether America might elect its first ever female president. Now, as you know, that didn't happen. But it did happen for Mexico, Namibia, and North Macedonia. All of those countries elected their first ever female presidents in 2024. And having women in these top jobs sparked that age-old debate about whether female leaders do things differently to male ones. So today, we're going to see if there is any evidence to suggest that women lead differently to men, or is it all based on stereotypes? So today we're going to be testing out some of these stereotypes, these generalizations, these big questions about gender and gender politics. And for the very first time on What in the World in the studio, we are going to play a game of True or False. And here to do that is Laura Garcia, BBC journalist. Welcome back to the podcast.
Woo! Thank you. I'm ready with my cards.
Yeah, so we have been looking up some kind of statements, right? I'm really interested in this area. And we've asked you to go away and find out whether they're true or false. Are you ready for your first question?
Oh man, I'm so ready. You gave me homework to go and read, and there's nothing that I like more than homework and reading.
I'm so over homework, Laura. And you can play along with us. See if you can work out whether the answers to some of these are true or false. Are you ready for your first question? Woo! The first woman to be elected head of state was in Europe. True or false?
So this is false. Actually, the first woman to be elected into this office was a prime minister in what we call Sri Lanka today, but back then it was called Ceylon. And she came into power after her husband passed away. And when she was campaigning to get re-elected or to get elected herself, she would cry. So people would call her the weeping widow. And that's going to be a big part of what we're going to be talking about today, these perceptions of how we expect men and women to behave and what the research shows about it.
And there's this whole thing about grown men don't cry, right? So
Well,
let's see. Are you ready for number two? True?
Let's do number two.
True or false? Women make up less than 7% of world leaders.
That one is true. Yeah, it's actually 6.7% of world leaders. But like you say, some of us just got our first female president. My home country of Mexico elected Claudia Sheinbaum last summer. And it was a pretty big deal.
Yeah, why was it such a big deal for Mexico and how did it get there?
So, quick intro to the history of Mexico. We'd been having elections for 200 years, electing presidents, until Claudia Sheinbaum came into power. So that's an enormous setting to put it into place. If you also consider, for example, that my granny was born in a Mexico in 1923, where women can vote or hold a bank account on their own, and now little bit over a century later, we have our first female president. That's an enormous thing, right?
Yeah.
We have some of the highest statistics for gender-based violence in Latin America. The number of feminicides in Mexico is only second to Brazil, according to UN figures. But at the same time, there's been huge step forward in legislation to guarantee kind of quotas and 50-50 representation in politics.
What is Claudia Sheinbaum like? Like, what is she like as a person? What's she like as a president? How does she lead?
Okay, so Claudia Sheinbaum has a really interesting history because she's not a career politician. She's always had one foot in politics and one foot in science. That's what she trained in. She's published loads of academic articles. She was even part of a UN panel that got the Nobel Peace Prize in 2007 for their work on climate change. And that translates into the positions that she's had in public life. She is very methodical. She's very direct. She likes data. She's a scientist. And sometimes people read that in Mexico, and you can see that reflected in the press and in the comments that she gets as cold. Now, whether that is because we're reading her as a woman, and that's very unusual for women in Mexico and what we expect women to be like, or whether we would say that regardless of her gender, it's a conversation that's a really interesting one to have. But her demeanor as a very kind of cool, calm, methodical politician has gotten her these kinds of headlines in Mexico. They called her Cold Claudia, La Fría Claudia.
Interesting. Let's delve into that a bit more with our next true or false. I'm just going to get it up here.
Yep.
Okay. True or false? Women leaders only succeed by acting like men.
Hold on a second. Have I got these upside down? No.
Nope.
That is false. We have seen examples from all across the board. Women, like men, have different personalities, right? And you can have people like maybe the images of Jacinda Ardern come to mind, who was Prime Minister of New Zealand, who would go and hug people. She cried in public at different events. She was pregnant during her tenure and kind of showed the more quote unquote traditional signs of femininity. And then you have people who can be really clear and really stern, like Claudia Sheinbaum, who's direct. In the UK, you have the figure of Margaret Thatcher. People would even call her the Iron Lady. So preparing for this episode, I spoke to Rosie Campbell, who is, and I'm going to read her title because I want to get it right. She's worked really hard for it. Not only is she a politics professor, but she's the director of the Global Institute for Women's Leadership at King's College London. So their whole thing is analyzing the data and understanding how women, not just in politics, but in business and in local government and different positions of leadership, how they transform their societies.
You know, one of the
सरसों के तेल की खुशबू से घर का खाना ही नहीं, हमारी परंपराएं भी महकती हैं। इसीलिए फॉर्च्यून कच्ची घानी शुद्ध सरसों तेल क्वालिटी के 100 से भी ज्यादा टेस्ट से गुजरकर स्वाद और शुद्धता को बनाए रखता है।
You know, one of the reasons it's difficult to think about, to assess, to research whether men and women have different leadership styles is we're often interested in the highest levels of leadership. So women heads of government or women CEOs. There are very small numbers of people that occupy those positions. So we haven't got a very big research pool to consider. And when we look at slightly lower levels of leadership, for example, whether you've got more women politicians generally, we do see some differences in outcomes. There is some research showing that women more often adopt empathetic leadership styles, although men can adopt them too, but women are slightly more likely to. But when you're looking at the very top levels of leadership, the processes that have allowed people to get there, men and women, are such that it's very likely that the men and women who reach the top will be pretty similar because they've had to go through the same incredibly difficult, fraught process to become a leader of a nation.
Okay, Laura, on to the next one. True or false? Women in politics are more likely to bring in policies that benefit women.
Ding! That one's true. So that we can see in the data and in the research really clearly, not just in King's College London, but in other things that I was reading, that look at how women impact policies, not just at a national level, but also at local level, right? And that has partly to do, and what the data shows, because of women's lived experience. So if you have grown up responsible for caring for your brothers or sisters or for your parents, you're more interested in health issues. There's things that only women go through, like sexual health issues or things around maternity, that then they look at and enact when they get into positions of power. Academics are very reluctant to say that this is because women care more about these issues for the sheer nature of being women, but it's more because of what we live through, right? So you live through your problems and you decide and you realize, oh, there's something that we can do to address this. Nevertheless, I also want to bring an example back from Mexico because we were talking, it's